it's funny because like I was sort of just nervous kind of heading into the show, guys. And most of you know how I feel about these 3 hour shows. They kind of take a lot out of you, right? Because I'm already committing myself to 3 hours on Monday night for Raw. A little bit used to that a lot more, especially because it's a Monday. Okay, it's the start of the work week. Cool, fine. It's my job, fine. But committing 3 hours on a Saturday is a whole different beast, a whole different animal. And so there's times where I kind of go into these shows going, please, please let it be worth it. Me tuning in for 3 hours on a Saturday. And so thankfully, I will say that it was definitely worth it today because we got some really good stuff on today's episode of Collision. And the start of Rampage, I thought was really good. Unfortunately, like the last half hour of Rampage, I did start to feel a little bit tired. I definitely felt tired by the last half hour of it all. But again, the start of Rampage definitely still gained my interest. But then again, they were doing a parking lot fight. So who is not going to be interested in a bunch of guys going out there or two guys going out there and fighting and having blood and using cars and all of the madness that occurred in that match. So that was definitely going to keep me awake and on my toes there. But let's go ahead and jump right in. I want to start off with talking about what actually worked today on Collision. You all know my gripes with Collision. I'm not even going to rehash those because most of you already know how I feel about just sort of the layout of the show. Sometimes feels very missable, maybe one or two good matches here and there, but nothing really that I got to tune in for on a Saturday, right? Well, today's show definitely felt different. And the big thing that really, really helped today's show was one, it felt refreshing because we saw a lot of returning names, either talent that were out due to injury or talents that we just rarely see. We're talking Ray Phoenix. I keep wanting to say freaking Black Taurus, but Black Taurus is no longer Black Taurus. He's Beast Mortos. Beast Mortos, formerly known as Black Taurus. And we also had Rouge. We even had the grizzled young vets come out and make their debut. So there was definitely a lot of moving parts when it came to bringing in new faces or faces that we hadn't seen in a while. And so that definitely helped make the show feel refreshing because again, I absolutely hate just getting a bunch of matches with stars and jobbers. I don't want to see that. And that's what Collision became for so much, for so many weeks. And so this show did not have that. It had like one, maybe one or two matches, I think, that were like that, maybe even just one. And truthfully, it was fine. Like it didn't feel like it was the entire show. And so I felt really good about that. The other thing that I did like about Collision today, too, is that I didn't feel like there were any boring storylines. And I kind of felt like there were some storylines on previous episodes that felt a little bit dull, right? And maybe it had been because I wasn't tuning into Collision as much. But regardless, I didn't feel that way today. That was another thing I liked. The other thing I liked was that we actually had some like main stories from Dynamite that were enhanced today through Collision. And I feel like that was nice because as a weekly viewer of Dynamite, I liked that I tuned into Collision today because there are some things that happened on Collision that are going to be good to know when I tune into Dynamite and review Dynamite every Wednesday. So I felt like those were really the three main portions of Collision that really worked this week. And on top of that, we had a really strong main event for Collision. So I want to start things off with Swerve Strickland, and we're going to talk about that promo, where it might be going, as well as the main event that we got here today. All right, so this is kind of sick. So there was some criticisms in regards to the presentation of Swerve Strickland on Dynamite following Dynasty, right? There were some people that were like, "Oh, that should have been the opening match," or "Hey, we should have gotten a promo for Swerve Strickland." There was a lot of conversation around that. However, I felt personally happy that we got to see Swerve Strickland wrestle immediately following Dynasty because that already set this tone for what kind of champion Swerve is going to be. When I think about why Swerve got over with the AEW audience, he got over because of the matches that he was having. Those matches, that story that he had with Hangman Page, that's what got Swerve Strickland over, is the wrestling portion. So now that he's champion, you want to continue that. Like the AEW fan base really wants to see a champion that's a fighting champion. And so seeing Swerve go out and have that match on Dynamite was a start, of course. But then they followed it up, and I definitely preferred the presentation that we saw here today on Collision 10 times more than the presentation of him as champion on Dynamite this past Wednesday. This was 100 times better. And the reason for that was not only did we get him in a match, but we also got the promo. And there might be some Easter eggs in there as to where this story may be going. So when I started this podcast today, I said that part of the reason that I enjoyed tuning into Collision today was because I feel like this particular story is definitely going to help that I tuned in to Collision, found out what Swerve had to say, and this is going to help when I tune into Dynamite on Wednesday. And so basically, the big thing from this was two things. One, Swerve Strickland addressed Jack Perry's actions in which the Elite hit TK with the TK driver, and of course, taking out Tony Khan the way that Jack Perry did with the microphone. So he calls it this bitch move. We even get bitch moves chant. It killed me, by the way. We got bitch moves chants today on TV. But the big thing that sort of came from that portion is all right, clearly Swerve Strickland bringing this up, he's bringing this up. Why? Because he is the AEW champion. He is the face of the company right now as champion. And he is a baby face. So, of course, your baby face champion is going to come out and talk about what the bad guys did to the boss. So, you have that aspect of it. But the other aspect of it is okay, we now need to hear a response to this from either the Bucks or Jack Perry. We need to hear a response to what Swerve said. They just can't be. He literally said it was a bitch move. You can't have someone said that you did something that was a bitch move and not respond to that. So I am expecting to hear the Elite respond to Swerve and what he had to say about that. And on Wednesday, there was a lot of people in our chat. Me and Reg spoke about it. We were talking about this whole Team Elite versus Team AEW. That's where a lot of this feels like it's going. And it's looking right now like Swerve is definitely going to be on Team AEW as, of course, AEW World Champion. So let's hope that that's the direction that they end up going in, because if it is, that would be an interesting story. And again, just based off the way that this promo began with Swerve, that sort of feels like a direction that they may be heading in. So, of course, we'll find out more over on Dynamite. The other thing that I liked about this, and this was a small little thing that kind of went a long way, is that Swerve, before becoming champion, he was a big heel. He was a massive heel. This man broke in to another man's home and talked to another man's child while his child was sleeping and his wife was in the other room. Okay. That is some next level heel shit right there. And so the fact that we really like Swerve turned babyface because the crowd saw him as sort of like this. I don't know. They saw him as like an underdog, maybe. They saw him as a guy that was talented and they wanted to see him get to this main event spot. So it was more so that he turned babyface because of the wrestling, because of the cool things that he did in that death match with Hangman Page. And like the people weren't going to root against a guy that was doing all of these cool things that people were reacting to. And so, but technically, like the actions of Swerve were still prior to this, still heel actions. So today in this particular promo, he brought up something that painted him in a different light, in the light that we're seeing him in now. And that is him bringing up his daughter. So he brings up his daughter and says that the daughter told him, like, "Oh, I don't even, like, I'm proud of you, dad, but I don't even know you." And he talks about his relationship with his daughter, and basically this being this whole thing where he has missed a lot of parties. We all know that wrestlers are on the road a lot. So he wants to prove to his daughter that this was definitely worth it, and thus puts himself, pipes up his AEW championship reign. So I felt like this was the first time that we got a different look at Swerve, a different side to who he is. Now we got Swerve, who is a father. And we got to see that side because we never saw that side before. Before we were seeing him be a menace to other people's children. So that was another thing that I liked as well. I thought that was really good. But then the other thing that happened with this was that Claudio Castagnoli answered Swerve Strickland's open challenge. And so now that's 2 weeks already that he's been champion. Not 2 weeks, excuse me, 2 shows. 2 shows that he's been champion. And on both of the shows, he has wrestled. And I love that because I do want to see a fighting champion. But, anyways, this match, guys, with Claudio Castagnoli, please, if you have time, I believe, I'm not even too sure, guys, if AEW posts the highlights up on their YouTube page, go check it out or go check out the match itself. Like, this is definitely a match that I would go out of my way to go watch because it really was good. And here's the thing, like, the match with Kyle Fletcher, that was a good match too. Unfortunately for me, what took out of it that particular day was the audio issues. That really took away from me for the match, but the match was still good, but it did not compare to what we saw today with Swerve and Claudio. And the reason this match in particular was very good, honestly, the pacing was great from this. There was no moments where I felt like I was bored. They kept the energy throughout the entire thing. It was hard hitting, and Claudio really made Swerve work to successfully defend his championship. Like, Claudio basically said, "This is my chance to become champion. I don't care that this guy just became champion. This is my chance and I am going to fight for it." And that is literally the message, the vibe that we got from Claudio. And on Swerve's side, it was like, dude, I just became champion. I'm out here proving myself. I can't lose in my first title defense because the match with Kyle Fletcher was a championship eliminator match. So this was his official first title defense. And there was just a lot of really great moments. And speaking of moments, it was the counters. The counters that we saw in this match is, I think, would really hit home. And there was a moment where Swerve did a rather attempted a stomp, but freaking Claudio countered that with an uppercut. And so it just looked really nice. Please take your time to go watch this match. It was very, very enjoyable. Of course, eventually Swerve does hit the Swerve stomp, and then he hits the God, what does he call it? The house call. He hits the house call and gets the win. So I definitely feel like this match and the presentation of Swerve today made up for the more of a little bit of I don't want to say lackluster, but maybe the lack of the presentation that we got on Dynamite for him, especially considering that he had just won the championship. They definitely made up for it here today on Collision, and that was really one of my favorite things here on the show.